Not too long ago, if you were to buy a mid-size sedan, the word sport wouldn't be anywhere in your vocabulary when you were shopping. But nowadays, mid-size sedans are actually quite high-performance machines. And what I have behind me are two great examples of that. The Mazda6 with a turbocharged 4-cylinder and the Toyota Camry TRD with a big ol' V6. In this video, we are going to look at the two approaches, figure out which one's best, and then drag race them to see which one's quicker. The new 2020 Mazda 6 is very elegant. It's got a lot of sophistication. The new Toyota Camry TRD, it's loud, it's bold, it's in your face. Here's what I'm talking about. TRD stands for Toyota Racing Development. It is Toyota's high-performance division. And there's no fewer than 14 badges on this Camry. There's one on each wheel. There is one on each floor mat. There is one in the headrest of both of the front seats. There are, of course, a couple, I repeat, two TRD badges on both exhausts. There's a big ol' red one here on the trunk lid. There's, of course, a TRD logo on the shift knob. And then, of course, there's one in the center IP, and I'm probably missing a few here and there. The front of the Mazda is very sophisticated. You've got this jewel-like grille with this chrome accent that extends the entire length of the front end. And then for just a little bit of additional bling, you do have some chrome accents here on the lower front splitter. The front of the Toyota is just much more aggressive. There's a lot of angles going on between this front splitter that looks like something out of a race car to these winglets along the side. Here you've got big vents, fake vents actually. They don't go anywhere and they don't do anything. It's just very in your face, very bold. The side of the Mazda, very curvaceous. You've got flowing lines and they're offset by satin gray wheels. And finally, more chrome here that surrounds the windows. Everybody knows the fastest color is red. I mean, name a faster color. Blue, no. Orange, no. Green. Green is like the slowest color. Red is by far the fastest color, especially when offset with black. And there's a lot of that trend here on the Toyota. So for example, large 19-inch black TRD wheels offset by red brake calipers. Along the side, check it out, you've got a side skirt in black with red pinstriping. And then finally toward the rear, you've got another little winglet down here just for additional pizzazz. And we get to the rear of the Mazda, once again, more chrome, a little bit more bling, a tiny little deck spoiler here, and then some badging that says Skyactiv G, which doesn't sound very sporty. And then we get to the back of the Camry and you'll find two massive exhausts with a full rear diffuser and this spoiler, which looks almost identical to the one you'll find on the C8 Corvette. In fact, could be that GM stole the design from Toyota. I'm kidding, of course, but which one of these two looks better? In terms of design, the overall winner is obvious. No, it's not the Mazda for me, it's gotta be the Camry, because it's just so over the top. It brings out your inner 8-year-old. And of course, the natural argument is, well, does a Camry need a rear diffuser? No! What's your point? It has one. It's badass, it looks great, I love it, it's just so much fun. Now, being so crazy on the outside, you'd expect the interior of the Camry to be a little bit more toned down, but it's not. Because naturally, the color combo in here is black and blue. Oh, I'm sorry, not black and blue, black and red, and it's everywhere. Take a look at the seats. And then you get to the seat belts, and the seat belts are bright red, just like you'd find in a Porsche 911 GT3. Heck, even the floor mats look sporty in this Camry. First of all, you've got Camry TRD font there across the side, but check it out, the whole thing is surrounded in red. Oh, and if you think they forgot the back, they haven't, because it's the exact same thing here in the back seat as well. And take a look at the pedals in the Camry. You can see here that they definitely look sporty, but the cool thing is they are actually metal, and they've got these nice little circle grips on them. Yeah, they're pretty good, and they're nicely spaced as well. It is kind of a special experience when you start up the Camry because, of course, this one does have push button start, foot on brake, start it up, and these red gauges fade into life, and then you get this TRD animation here in the center. The Camry does have a 7-inch touchscreen incorporated into the center console. This is feeling a little bit late 2000s, if you know what I mean. The screen itself is a little small, and this piano black finish is a little cheap looking, and then the way they've incorporated these buttons, it just doesn't look very modern. And then you get to the colors they use on this system, and you've got multiple choices in actual backlighting, but this is the worst color by far. It's pink! Ah! Why is it pink? Everything else on the interior is red, and they chose a pink background. Of course, you can't change it to blue or white or gray. One thing I do love about this system is they do give you a proper volume and a proper tune knob. What a concept. So even though it doesn't look very modern, it is super easy to use, it's fast, and it's very intuitive. We quickly mentioned the piano black trim here on the interior of the Camry, but they didn't actually carry that down into the center console. Instead, they use this dark gray black, which I guess I'm gonna call clarinet black or something, because that's basically what it looks like. However, unfortunately, as you can see in this car, it still scratches extremely easily. The center console is pretty standard here on the Camry. You do have your TRD shift knob with Eco, Normal, and Sport buttons down here in the center. And then if you move toward the front, you do have this secret hidden cubby. In the central display here, you can view all sorts of important information, and there's even an eco indicator. Now, naturally, in the eco indicator, the icons they give you are a leaf, that makes sense, but they also give you a snowflake and a hawk. I'm not quite sure what the snowflake and the hawk are all about. Stepping inside the Mazda 6, and wow, what a difference. That Toyota has a nice interior, but it still feels like a Toyota. This Mazda interior feels a lot more like a Lexus. It's very sleek and very well designed, but also very, very white. The white on the seats look elegant when they are clean. However, I fear these are going to get dirty. The one I'm really scared about is the suede across the dash here. It looks great. However, touch it with anything on your hands and it's quickly going to turn multiple shades of colors you don't want it to be. The Mazda here does have this little chrome strip across the center of the seats. This is kind of unusual. You don't often see seats with different materials other than cloth or leather in the middle of the seats. Luckily, you can't really feel it. It doesn't poke you in the back, but it's an interesting design choice as to why it's here. Overall, the interior quality in the Mazda is just nicer than Toyota. The quality of the materials are nicer, the overall design is more sleek. However, this infotainment system in the Mazda is so hard to use. And I've talked to them about this, and they say, they promise me that after a couple of weeks, you get used to it and it's actually easier than a normal system. But the way it works is, when you're stopped, you can actually use it as a touch screen. So it operates like a fairly standard system. However, once you start moving, you have to use this little rotary dial here by the shifter because it locks you out from the touchscreen. But Mazda assures me that this little dial down here is a better system because it's a physical touch control, which means you don't have to look over and push a button on the screen while you're driving along. I completely disagree. I think this is almost impossible to use. Tuning the radio is super hard. It's a long process. The presets are hard to find. I'm really not happy with this overall Mazda system. Some of the commenters are going to completely disagree with me. That's fine, but it's just not that great. I really like the gauge cluster in the Mazda here. We've got our RPM readout on the left. It's actually a physical dial, and then we've got vitals on the right, also physical dials. So you've got your fuel gauge and your temperature, but then here in the middle, as you can see when I turn the car off, you actually have a virtual speedometer that comes to life when you turn the car on. How cool is that? And then it tells you other important information on the right and the left, which are configurable. So in this case, we have MPG and a secondary fuel gauge, which shows you the range remaining. And check this out, the Mazda does display your speed limit in the upper right hand corner as a number, but it also displays it as a little red check mark along the length of the speedometer. So when you hit 25, you can see that's a number that's illuminated red, letting you know that's as fast as you can drive. In the center of the Mazda, you'll also find a toggle for a sport mode, but unlike the Toyota, there's no eco mode. So you just have normal and sport. And then in the front, you've got a large cubby for additional storage. And this little chrome piece looks like it should be an additional cubby, like a little handle. It does nothing, it's just for design. Here's your rotary dial, very similar to BMW iDrive, and then decent sized set of cup holders, and even a little itty bitty tiny armrest. Now I mentioned that both of these are sporty sedans, and that is absolutely true. The Mazda has a 2.5 liter turbocharged engine, 227 horsepower. Doesn't sound like a whole lot, but over 300 pound-feet of torque, and at a mile above sea level mated to a 6-speed automatic. This car really moves pretty darn well. The Camry uses a more traditional engine setup in this class of vehicle. So it uses a V6, 301 horsepower, 267 pound-feet of torque, 8-speed automatic versus a 6-speed in the Mazda. Both of these cars both have front-wheel drive. And here's the question. Which one is quicker when you line them up for a drag race? Is it turbocharged power with a lot of torque? Or naturally aspirated V6 power with a lot of horsepower?
Here's a great part of my job. Tommy does all the hard work and basically gives you all the information you need to know about these two vehicles. And then me and Nathan swoop in and get to do the fun part, which is drag racing, because let's face it, we all want to know which of these two is faster in a straight line. And this is a good drag race because basically you've got 301 horsepower versus 250. But since we're a mile above sea level and since I have a turbocharger, let's see if that makes up for that 50 horsepower deficit. Of course, this also has more torque, and really drag racing is about more torque. So I'm feeling good about my chances to beat Nathan in this race.
Go! Off the line, he got me. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Bye-bye, Nathan. Look at that.
And it was an even start. And I'm even wearing your shirt, damn it.
I know, how did that happen?
I gotta believe more in Roman. Wait a minute, that doesn't work.
Turbos and altitude equal victory.
Yeah, and you know what? We had an even start too. I mean, there was no question we started exactly at the same time.
But you know what? We should swap cars just for, and grins.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, let's swap cars.
Yeah. This thing revs nice.
All right, I'm in the Camry now. I have turned traction control back on, and I'm putting it in sport mode, even though, yeah, there it is, it's in sport mode. Why? Because I just think that's a better way to actually drag race. So we'll see how I can do in the Camry, and we'll see if the results that we had hold. I spooled the hell out of this thing. Oh, come on, Toyota, 8 speeds, let's go. Go, 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 go.
.39. This thing is a lot faster.
So how much faster is that 0 to 60?
Almost a second faster.
Yeah, there's like this dead spot. You floor it, and then like it's almost like turbo lag, but it doesn't have a turbo.
That's exactly it, and I think that's the altitude talking to that car.
And you actually lost traction. You spun your tires, and I still couldn't keep up.
Yeah, I know. It's part of my lead foot syndrome. But the good news is, that car on a track handles really, really good. This car handles like a luxury sedan, which is, I think, what they're supposed to do.
Yeah. Well, let's toss it back to Tommy and let him take over.
Smart. Rear seat legroom and headroom in the back seat of the Camry is very good. I don't have any USB outlets in this one back here to charge up my phone, but overall very comfortable. One thing you do have to be careful of is this sill is pretty wide. And when you step out of the vehicle, it's all too easy to snag your foot on the side skirt here, so you gotta be careful of that. Just like the Camry, the front seat of this Mazda is pushed all the way back, and knee room is significantly less than that car. And you'll also notice headroom is much less as well, so I'm 6'1" tall, and definitely out of both knee room and headroom in the back seat of the Mazda. So which one would I buy? Well, price-wise, there's a pretty big discrepancy in price, about $4,000. The Camry's about $32,000, the Mazda's about $36,000. Of course, there are higher equipped Camrys you can buy, which would compete more directly with that Mazda. But personally, even though the Mazda's a lot more refined, a lot more comfortable, and a lot more elegant, I kind of like the Camry. It's just so out there, so ridiculous, that it puts a big smile on my face whenever I drive it. As always, this is Tommy with the Fastlane Car. Head over to tflcar.com for the latest and greatest in mid-size sporty sedan reviews.